All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining my March South Coast Veterinary Management Solutions webinar. I am so excited to have Lucy Nash present to us today on employee retention. If you have any questions while she's talking, please throw your questions into the chat and she'll take some time to respond to them when she has a moment. So please use the chat as your communication tool for those of you watching live. This meeting is being recorded, as I'm sure you all saw, since it makes you acknowledge it. And after a bit, probably the next week or so, I will upload it to my South Coast Veterinary Manage 263 YouTube channel. I figured it out. South Coast Veterinary Manage 263. Although if you just look me up under South Coast Veterinary Management Solutions, you'll find it too. That's just a little bit longer. So please feel free to leave if you have to. Go ahead. I understand we're all busy, so that's why it's recorded and uploaded for later viewing. I am very, very excited to have Lucy be able to come on today. I've known Lucy, we figured it out yesterday. I've known her for 3 years. This June, because we met at Pack Vet back in up in San Francisco when she worked for Just Food for Dogs. She's a very cool lady. I'm excited to have spent some time with her at WVC last week and connecting that way. So I'm going to let Lucy introduce herself more thoroughly. But please, everyone, welcome Lucy Nash.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Yeah, Melissa, oh my gosh, it's been 3 years. Yes, that's so cool. Yeah, thank you, and thank you all for joining. I know Thursday morning, I know you guys are super busy, especially vet professionals. Weekdays, we are all super busy, crazy people. So I really appreciate the time. And anyone watching this on recording after the fact, thank you for taking the time to listen. As Melissa said, yep, I'm a technician based down here in Southern California. I started my career in clinical practice. I actually started as a vet assistant, went to veterinary technician school to get licensed and stayed in clinical practice. And then kind of, unfortunately, you kind of hear this about a lot of people. I became a bit of a burnout statistic. And I actually left the industry. I didn't want to leave the industry completely, though. I do love veterinary medicine. It technically is my second career. So it was something I came to a little later in life. And I just loved it so much. I didn't want to completely leave, even though I was burnt out in clinical practice. And I was fortunate enough to start working with a company, Just Food for Dogs. Many of you may have heard of. I worked with their veterinary team for multiple years. And now I actually work for a company named Hound, who are a unified platform for your veterinary talent needs. I mentioned that at the beginning because they do get mentioned in the presentation here as something we'll talk about. So we'll share a little bit more about there, and I'll also leave my communication details at the end of there as well if anyone wants to connect later in after the presentation. So I'm going to share my screen here. I will hopefully, yep, okay, hopefully that's all come up. And so today we're going to talk about how you can rally your team and reap the rewards of retention for your team. So the reason why I wanted to talk about this and why it's something I'm really passionate about is we hear all the time that, why are we focusing on retention? Retention is, people just need recruiting. We need to hire doctors. We need to hire support staff. We need more people. And that's absolutely something we're at right now. But honestly, a lot of teams miss that their most underutilized recruitment tool is their current team, retaining their current team. If you are not losing staff, you're not having to hire new ones. And also your current team are going to be a awesome word of mouth out there for new team members. Say you're expanding, you need another doctor, and you've been working with a doctor who is going to recommend their friends, recommend their coworkers, recommend their colleagues in there. Same with technicians. We all know, I'm sure everyone on this listening to this has shared their either horror stories or praise stories of a hospital they've worked at before. You have to think about that as part of your recruitment strategies as well. So what we want to talk about here today is why retention is important, the many different ways it is important, and then some small strategies that you can use in your clinic to help with retention of your team. So I already kind of introduced myself here, but just to go over it again, and also because, never will not want to share a picture of my cute cat right here. This is Archie. He is a monster because he's a ginger cat with one brain cell that he shares with the network. We all know how that works. But yeah, as I kind of mentioned before, I've been an RVT here based in Southern California for over 8 years now. I've actually been in the industry for almost 10. I've been working as a client experience manager for the last 2 years. And I just want to help the vet profession curate a career they love for themselves and encourage us to all help each other. So this is kind of a bit of a weird poll to ask at the beginning, but like especially after the last few minutes that I've just spoken about here. But you can leave comments in the chat if you have answers specifically to this or anything that comes up here. But I mean, how many of us really think vet med has a retention problem? I mean, we hear about it all the time. We hear that, people are hemorrhaging out of the industry where people are leaving, they're getting jobs elsewhere. Do we really have a retention problem? I mean, unfortunately, the short answer is yes, we do. Everywhere, every industry in the world has a retention problem right now, and the veterinary industry is not one that is immune to that. So we can also back that up with some statistics here as well. So the statistics I pulled here, I do have a QR code on the slide. I do have a link of resources that I'll share with Melissa afterwards as well for these. So these are coming from the AHA white paper. So this is from the initial white paper published in February 2024. AHA actually released a part 2 of this paper just last week while we were all at Western Veterinary Conference with updated statistics and more information, very similar to the things we're going to be talking about here. The study was called Stay Please, and the Stay Please Part 2. So looking generally from the statistics of them, this was basically AHA sending out a survey to veterinary professionals. So it was primarily DVMs. There were some other vet professionals in there, support staff in there, but it was a primary focus on DVMs. But from the study that they had, over 30% of the people they surveyed had a plan to leave their current job. So in the position they were in right now, they were already actively searching to leave that current role. From that 30%, 9 out of 10 of those will never return to their job. So to that job that they had there. So whether that be that hospital, whether that be out of the industry completely, and actually that's part of the next statistic of those people that were surveyed that will never return to that job, half of them were planning to leave vet med altogether. So if you think about that, that's even if we do rough math here, that's 15% of people who are currently planning to leave their job, planning to leave the industry altogether. That's 15% of vet med that are looking to already leave vet med, and that's a really scary statistic that we have here. So looking at that intent to leave, I know there's a lot of focus these days on, well, this is something that was very much became a problem in 2020. We had the pandemic, we had COVID, it really pushed some things. But part of that AHA study also looking at the economic state of the veterinary profession, they have actually been doing these kind of studies ever since the 1960s of vet professionals. Now, again, a lot of this is primarily focused on DVMs. But I'm sure if we studied our support staff in here too, the statistics probably would not be too dissimilar, if potentially even higher. So you can see here they asked basically, have you ever considered leaving the veterinary profession? Did you consider and decide to stay, or are you already actually leaving? Oh, sorry, have you never considered? Are you considering it, but you've decided to stay, or are you considering leaving altogether? And you can see even as early as the 1980s, this is something that started here. Like you can see it was 100%, no one had ever thought about leaving the profession early on. And then as we kind of hit around the 80s, it starts to be almost 30% of the people in the profession are looking to actually leave the profession already, or like considered it but decided to stay. It did kind of hit a low here around the 2000s mark, and it is actually ironically starting to get better, which is great. We hear that we're in the worst case here for veterinary retention. Actually, you can see over the course of time, it's actually been starting to get slightly better over the last few years because teams are starting to focus on things like employee retention and employee engagement. Now, of course, there's a couple of caveats to that. Of course, they wouldn't be able to capture people who did leave the industry and find out, what caused them to leave the industry. People are not going to really take a AVMA or ALHA survey if they've already left the industry. But but this kind of showcases this has not been a recent problem. This is something that we have been dealing with for years now, and it's really great that we're all starting to focus on that now. So, with all of those statistics in mind, the question we ask is, so why should you care about retention? If the statistics weren't enough for you about why you should care about retention, there's lots of other reasons we should care. It matters because these are really the four. Everything else, there's lots of reasons we should care about retention, but realistically, these are the four main categories of why this is super important. Firstly, you're going to have happier, more hardworking humans. We all, let's be real, transparent here. We all work for a paycheck. If all of us could still have the lives, like earn the same amount of money, but to go sit on a beach every day, or go hiking every day, or play with our dogs and cats every day, even the person who loves their job the hardest would 100% give that up to live that lifestyle. But we also want to, if you're going to spend 40 plus hours a week somewhere, we want to be happy while we're doing it. We want to enjoy it, and we want to engage in it. It also leads to better client experiences and better patient care experiences. And both of those two kind of interlink in with each other. If you are providing better patient care, you're getting better client experiences. And if you're having better client experiences, that can often lead to better patient care. And something that a lot of people obviously are going to hone in on here, it does reduce costs within the hospital as well. So focusing on those individually, happy, hardworking humans. So there was a study conducted by Gallup of global workers workers studying disengagement. Now, I always caveat here, this study was not just in the veterinary industry. It was across all industries, all workers, looking at low engagement and turnover rates. And it showed that this was from 2024 statistics. It showed that those companies that had low engagement, so their team were not engaged in the work and the mission of the location, had higher turnover rates, anywhere between 18 and 43% higher than those teams that had higher engagement. So engagement and retention, while one does not necessarily equal the other, they are a self-feeding cycle. When you have employees that are engaged and in the mission, in the work, in what they're doing, they're going to have higher retention. Higher retention is going to lead to more engagement because the team are going to be happier working with each other. They're going to bond and they're going to become more of a team. So it's a self-fulfilling cycle there. And it also just leads to people being happy with their work. Again, we'd all love to be paid to sit at home with our puppies and kittens, or sit on the beach or hike, or whatever your preferences are there. But if we're going to have to work, we'd all like to work somewhere where we enjoy working. So better client experiences. Now, obviously, there are a lot of tools and technology out there that are going to help you with things like appointment scheduling, reminders, patient information management. I'm sure Melissa has got a slew of information to be able to help you there with all those kind of different things. But there's one thing that you're never really going to be able to automate, and that's the actual interactions you have person to person with your clients. And that's every single person in your clinic. So that's when they come in, when they're greeted by the receptionist, when they're greeted by getting a history taken by the technician or the assistant, when they interact with the doctor, when they're checked out every time. They're going to have all those little personal interactions. And that is something you're never going to be able to fully automate. So there's information out there that the average business can lose up to 20% of customers annually by failing to take care of customer relationships. And why is retention going to help that? That's going to help those clients build a relationship with every single member of the team. So when they come in and they see the same face at reception, when they see the same technician, the technicians know their pet very well. Like, they know where the best place is if they like belly rubs, if they don't, if they like scratches behind the ears, if they don't. And these are all sound like silly things when you say them now, but they really are little things that can build up to a great client relationship. So all these little things here. So again, kind of focusing on breaking that down into more like succinct steps here. So again, there's going to be knowledge and expertise why that client relationship is there. Those clients are going to start trusting more and more when they see the same face, the same technician, the same assistant, the same receptionist. So things like you can start utilizing tech appointments before. Another topic that we talk about is vet tech utilization. Retention is going to help vet tech utilization because those clients don't need to necessarily hear every single piece of information from the vet, because the vet is the only face that they consistently see every time. If they're seeing the same technician, if they're seeing the same assistant, if they're seeing the same receptionist, they will have trust in that employee to get that information from them as well, which can free up the doctor's time to be able to utilize them for other their knowledge and skills. Trust is another one there, right? Like the same thing, building that trust there. Improved communication, efficient communication, and empathy and compassion. They're going to know these patients. They're going to have more efficient communication. They're going to know their communication styles, which ones are better to be reached by text than phone, which ones are going to be better to receive emails, who responds, which member of the family we need to contact about XYZ. Just having those kind of things known. And then with empathy and compassion for those lifelong pets that come in and you see them from when they're puppies all the way through to their final appointments, they have that empathy because they've experienced the emotional stress of that patient. They know that patient like they're almost like one of their own. How many of us here have got patients at our hospitals that are like our own babies to us? That's something that we do in this industry, and we can build and foster that relationship with better retention. Streamlining processes and problem solving. Again, within your hospital, if your technicians, your assistants, your practice managers, your receptionists have been there a long time, they'll be able to see like maybe where there are gaps in your processes, where they can encourage solutions and suggestions. You make it a team effort. As Melissa mentioned, we spent some time together at Western Veterinary Conference. If your team members go off to conferences and get, continued education, they may see different skills, different tools out there from the exhibit hall and things like that. They can come in and say, hey, cool, I went to this event and I learned about this thing. Maybe it's something we can implement. And it really helps them keep engaged, but it's also great for the business because you're learning, evolving, and growing there. And then loyalty and advocacy, personalized care. Again, we kind of already talked about this a little bit, but those team members getting to know their clients and the clients having that personalized level of care because they know the team members very well. And then the last two are super important. I think probably the most important of all is teamwork and collaboration and reduce stress. So teamwork and collaboration, having that better client, if your team are working together as a team, that is going to come off as a better client experience because they know they're not getting told two different things by two different people in the same hospital in a short span of time. And that reflects in the client interactions. And then reduce stress, obviously, for the same reason. If your team are not stressed, that stress is not going to emanate to the pets, is not going to emanate to the clients. And that is something that is going to provide better customer service. All of that kind of leading into better patient care. So a more retained team and having more engagement, you're going to have a stable, experienced veterinary team. They're going to deliver optimal patient care. They're going to know those patients' histories. They're going to know that information. They can also, some of the things we kind of already talked about. When I show you the list here of why retention helps with patient experience, a lot of this is very similar to how it helps with client experience as well. These two really do go interlinked with each other. So things like institutionalized knowledge and skill refinement. You're going to have some team members that are better at some things than others. Some are going to be great talkers and love client communication, and some just aren't very good at it. Some are great at monitoring anesthesia or different procedures, and some are not, which also leads into mentorship. Your team can help train each other to do these things. And the more skilled your team is, the better patient care that you're going to have there. Continuation of care and early detection. Again, having a consistent team, they're going to know these patients' histories, even if it can be something as small as like, hey, this dog that comes in does not like it when you touch their ears, so don't, to, oh, well, there's a little, this dog's come in to board and had a lump on its rear end, and now all of a sudden that lump is like a little bit bigger. I wonder if the owners have noticed. And you can share that information because you have that deeper knowledge and you've been working with them for a longer time. Streamline processes and improve communications in similar ways to how this helps with the client experience. This is going to massively help with patient care too. Streamline communication and getting that information across to each other as part of patient care is only going to be a net positive for your patient care. Then we have reduced turnover costs. So again, we're looking at patient care here. Not, we're going to talk about costs in just a moment, but reduced turnover costs. You're going to have the reduced costs of patients having to come in multiple times. This is going to work for patient care and for your hospital overall. If you can do multiple things, if you have a skilled staff and a full team, that you can get all the things that the patient needs done in one appointment rather than having to space them out over multiple appointments. That's great for the patient, less stress. They're not having to come in as many times. That's great for the client, same reasons, and great for the team because it's being more efficient and more effective there. And then a positive work environment, empowerment, and reduced stress is always going to be a thing here. So having that retained and consistent team that is going to foster a positive work environment and lead to more increased job satisfaction and empowerment. Again, we talked about here very similar to mentorship. If you have a team member that is really strong in one particular skill and utilizing them to help train the rest of the team to be stronger in that skill, it's going to be great for the whole team overall, but you're empowering that team member to become a bit more of a leader in the team. And that is career growth, which is something that, a lot of positions within veterinary medicine don't always have that idea of necessarily where their career growth is there. Realistically, though, I know this is the one that everyone wants to know about. How does better retention equal reduce costs? So some really scary, but I feel like definitely need to share here with you statistics. So I don't know, and I'll ask here because I've put some people to put in the chat. And for those of you that were listening to the recording, you can kind of think about this here. Does anyone know what the median industry cost associated to burnout and turnover is in veterinary medicine? Any thoughts or any ideas? I saw Melissa mouthing something, but I don't know. She knows she's muted. And a lot is definitely a good answer. Okay, so we've got an answer of a lot. That is correct. Oh, so 2,000 per 20,000 per employee, 5,000. These are some great numbers. Okay. You're all gonna hate the answer, but these are some great answers that we've got here. So Frontiers is a company that did a study to estimate the economic cost of burnout in veterinary professionals to highlight the financial reasons why the industry should address the burnout crisis. And this is solely from a organizational perspective. So we're going to break it down by position. So for veterinarians, according to the study, the median industry cost of burnout attributed to turnover is $928 million. So as you saw, you guys had some good numbers, but they were a little under there. So that's just for veterinarians. Now, then we look at support staff, the median industry cost of burnout was $933 million. So almost just as much just on support staff. So that's almost $2 billion in cost across the industry just to replace talent. That is a scary number right there. And the Center of American Progressive calculates that the cost of turnover to be about 20% of the employee's annual salary for workers earning less than $50,000. So I think that's where the $20,000 and the $5,000 numbers were coming from there. So if you think about that on a just individual, like those numbers, 2 billion, $933 million, like they're scary numbers and high to think of. And you just wrapping your mind around those is hard. So if you think about it of just a unique individual, like employees numbers, 20% of their annual salary, if they're less than 50,000, is the cost of turnover each year. And that's some scary numbers. So you can actually kind of work out for your hospital where you're at for those kind of things. And I posted up on here how to calculate what the industry average rates are for percentage of turnover right now. So the average annual turnover in veterinary medicine, according to AHA's 2024 study, was 23%. Now, there are some industries that are worse than that. There's some industries that are better than that. I mean, I think as an industry, we can do better. But it's also not, horrific. Sometimes you hear scaremonger stories that it's like 50 or 75%. It's not as scary as that, but 23 is still a fairly high number for turnover rate. So, but breaking that down by position, for practice managers, it's roughly 10.3%, DVM 16%, technicians is 23.4%, and then For receptionists and all other staff, these were the two that were the highest percentage of turnover. That's 32.5 and 32.9% turnover each year. Now, there's a number of factors into there why certain positions may be higher than others. For managers, for technicians, for DVMs, we go through a lot of schooling. We put a lot in there, so there may be just that element of like we're gonna stick it out for a little bit longer than we maybe we're happy to do so, but we should. But these are definitely numbers we should be addressing. No, there is never going to be a scenario in an ideal world where any hospital or any industry has a 0% turnover rate. There are going to be reasons people leave, factors that are out of our control. People retire out of the industry, people relocate and move. People have other life-changing events that can happen that cause them to leave the workplace. But those numbers and those factors would be really low. These numbers are not going to be 32%, 23%, even 16% for DVMs, considering how much you guys pay for vet school and how much work you go through. That is a very high percentage right there. And that's not going to be covered just by those that retire out of the industry or leave for other reasons. So these are the average industry numbers here. You can easily calculate where your hospital is based on these numbers if you're doing, how you're doing compared to the nation's average here. So if you wanted to work out what your individual hospital's calculation of turnover is here, whether that be for individual staff, like groups of staff, or if you wanted to do it overall, there's a really easy way to calculate this. So the first thing you do is you take the last 12 months of you can do it for 2024 going January to December, or you can take it from the last 12 months. You're going to first of all get the number of people that left from your clinic. So how many people in the last 12 months did you lose to the clinic? The next number you're going to need is identifying your practice's average total number of employees. Easiest way to do that, taking your 12-month period, how many employees did you have at the start of that period? How many employees did you have at the end of that period? Add them together, divide by 2. That's going to give you your average number of employees there. So now you have how many employees you left and how many average employees you have in your hospital. Then you're going to divide the number of people who left by the number, your average number, and that is your annual turnover rate. So with calculating that, I'm curious to know how many of you scored under or over. I mean, obviously you don't have to put anything specifically in the chat right now, but like something for you guys to think about here is like, where do you mark against the benchmarks here within the industry? But everything here, as you can see, like if you have a retention problem, we're going to find ways to solve it. So we're going to talk now about how we talked about scary numbers, how many people are leaving, what's causing, why retention is important. So what can we do to keep employees happy and engaged? I'm going to stop very briefly here to see if anyone either has any questions or even on that with this question, how do we keep employees happy and engaged, has any ideas about things that they do in their locations that keep their employees happy and engaged. Melissa, I don't know if you have anything you do with any of the locations you work with.
While people type stuff into the chat, I do think one of the things that you mentioned earlier was the empowerment, and I think that's huge. I think they've talked a lot about that. When technicians are allowed to use their skill set, they stay longer. And that goes for all positions, I think. So if you give someone responsibility, not more responsibility, just give them more work, but something that they enjoy, and you challenge them and they get to grow, I think that empowerment and growth is a huge piece of engagement that keeps them staying longer. And it doesn't cost you anything to do that, to give them not more responsibility, but to allow them to use their skill set to the fullest or teach them things. And I think that's a huge something that's not specific. I know that's very general, but I think that when you take that and use it works.
No, I agree. I think there, from a lot of, and again, I'm basing this solely here on personal experience and people I've spoken to within the industry. But those few people that I know that have fully just left the industry altogether, one of their biggest things was that they weren't being utilized. Like we hear a lot about, especially about technicians right now. And yes, I might be in a circle and bubble about like veterinary technicians because I am one, but you hear a lot about, they're just feeling like they're underutilized. They're not having any progression, skill progression, career progression, anything like that. And so and people, and I do appreciate from a hospital standpoint that they can be concerned that this is going to be an extra cost. You know, we have to send them off to these courses and training and all these kind of things. And that's not always the case. You can start internally. Professional development within the hospital could be things. Oh, awesome. Someone said here we have an employee experience coordinator that focuses on celebrating things. That's awesome. And that's another thing too, like just celebrating wins, whether that be birthdays, anniversaries, small little things like that. That's a really great thing. And having an experience coordinator, that is awesome that you have that at your hospital. And again, that could be something that is part of someone's role. If someone really enjoys doing, like, for me, for example, employee engagement is something I really like. That is my passion within the industry. If I was working in clinical practice, that might be something that I take on as part of my role. Like, I'd be a veterinary technician that also does does those kind of things. So there's lots of different things you can utilize there. So yeah, so let's talk about some things that you can do to keep your employees happy and engaged. So again, we're going to broad stroke categorize here and then dig deep into these a little bit more, but we kind of already started talking about the first one here. So growth is super important. Allowing people to grow in their positions, grow within their career, and supporting that. Togetherness, making sure you're fostering a team environment. Something I talked about on a previous webinar with someone was there is a lot of, and it's starting to become a lot better, but there's a lot of us versus them in vet med, and it can be the clinic versus the client. It can be the support staff versus the doctor. It can be everybody versus the manager, which I hate these things because it's not an us versus them. It can be back versus front. That's the one you see the most, is the front office staff versus the back staff. Like, no one thinks the other one like knows what they're doing. We form into two different groups, and that's not the case. You know, we all need to work together. There's not an us versus them. If you want to do us versus them, it's vet med versus the world. Let's do that. We are an industry. Let's do vet med versus the world. But we all need to work together. We're not going to make effective change. We're not going to retain staff. We're not going to grow as a industry or in our individual careers unless we work together. And then we can't ignore compensation. That is something that we do need to focus on, but compensation doesn't necessarily have to be baseline salary. There are other things we can look at here too. So let's focus on growth first. So have personalized team development. So again, there's a study that this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that showed that 94% of people would stay at their current employer if they invested in their long-term learning. That seems like a no-brainer, right? People will stay at their position. They would not leaving for money. They're not leaving for relocation or anything like that. It's just for places that invest in their long-term learning. Now, in VetMed, we kind of already have that partially built in. For the technicians, for DVMs, we have continuing education. A lot of employers provide CE stipends every year for their teams to be able to do that. But one thing I always encourage people to think about is your hospital actually encouraging your team to use it? Are you giving people the PTO to take the time to go do that CE? You know, are you also actively, like, if you hear about events, are you sharing those with the teams? There are so many. I appreciate sometimes with teams that are smaller, it is hard to say like, hey, let's close down the hospital and everyone go to Western Veterinary Conference or something like that. But there's so many online free CEs, like, hey, we're doing something right now. But, you know, there's lots of different ways that you can find online CE. There's so many companies. Like, are you encouraging and advertising those? Are you finding out what your team wants to do for growth? You may have a technician who wants to become a VTS. You may have an assistant who wants to be a technician. You may have an office manager who wants to grow into being, you know, a certified practice manager. Do you know those things about your team? Like, have you looked into the growth in here of what the team actually want to grow and how that growth can impact and help your clinic as well? So again, we're not just necessarily looking at both professional development, but you can also help with things like personal growth and development as well. So some ideas there, and I've included a couple of QR codes on here to places that have some great professional and personal development on here. So like ReadyVet Go is a great tool that can help with training and development mentorship for veterinarians. BlendVet for DEI initiatives and great things like that. They do a lot of things nationwide. Dr. Nicole Bruno is amazing. But we can look at things like for professional development. I won't talk about continuing education because that is something we all know dearly and deeply in our hearts. But mentorship, again, we talked about this earlier. Can you create in-house mentorship? This is something that doesn't even have to be costly and exposed out to like sending people out to additional training. Is there things you can do in-house? Can you pair experienced members, team members with newer team members? Can you partner maybe to avoid the us versus them thing with like the front and back, for example? Could you pair a technician on a quieter day? And I know we don't like using the Q word in vet med, but on a quieter day, like, can you have a technician maybe pair up with a receptionist and they kind of teach each other a little bit about what their roles are so they know and they can better integrate and better work together? Cross training and cross observing, yes, absolutely, we need to be doing that. Like, everyone needs to know how everybody else's roles work so we all know how we fit into that together. So you can empower them by actually having them training. If you have a team member, actually, this is something that was in a hospital that I used to work at. We would have a weekly team meeting before we opened, one every Tuesday. What we did in that team meeting was general announcements, things that are going on in the hospital. And then every week, one employee, and it rotated through all of us, one employee had a 10-minute section where they got to talk about something or explain something or teach something that was unique to them. So sharing their skill set with the rest of the team. And it could be on any subject. We worked in a surgical center, but it could be on nutrition. It could be on internal medicine. It could be on something they learned from emergency. But they had 10 minutes where they were like, hey, this is something I know I'm knowledgeable about. I'd like to share it with you. Here, let me teach you guys about it. It could be a demonstration. It could be just a presentation with slides. But it was the team sharing knowledge with each other. And it made sure every single person, whether you were a receptionist, a CSR, a technician, or assistant, everybody got to do that. And it rotated through. And it was really great because you got to learn what everyone's passions were, but you also got to learn something from them each week as well. And then we talked about like leadership development and career path development here. So you can offer leadership programs for aspiring managers. You can create opportunities for employees to take on leadership roles within the team. Maybe you have a team of technicians and you have someone who's been there a long time and is showing leadership skills. Can you help them with maybe they become a bit of a leader for the newer technicians that are coming in, and providing coaching and mentorship for them as well. And the same with creating career paths for different roles. We all get for when we get into veterinary medicine, a lot of us don't know what the career path will be and where we'll lead. I did not, when I started in technician school, when I was an assistant, this sitting here presenting this webinar is not where I thought my career path would go, but that's fine. But you can provide career development for these people and help them learn like where they want to be and what they want to do. The easiest way to do this is to have them, if they don't know already, and this sounds again something really silly, but it really helps out a lot of people, is have them go around the hospital on their day to day and think about when they're doing something. Do I enjoy doing this task? Like, some people love sitting working out the medications for people, and pharmacy is great for them. So, okay, maybe we can help foster them having a bit more of a, maybe they're more covering inventory for the pharmacy. Maybe they have a bit more responsibility with something to do with pharmacy because that's where they enjoy it. Maybe that's not what they enjoy. Maybe they enjoy talking to clients. I can't shut up. So when I was in clinic, I would always be the one that got sent in to go talk to the clients because nobody else wanted to talk to them. But I was happy to be in there for 20 minutes chatting, and we'd have to get me out of the room. Because I just wanted to know about their pets and explain everything and make sure they knew what they were doing when they left. And if you have someone like that, how can you foster that they help with the other team members who are maybe a little shyer around client communication? Can that person be more in charge of um, the client communications that are going out? Can they help write things? Can they be involved in your social media or something like that? They're more vocal things. Lots of different ways you can do that. And then obviously, for personal growth on here, you can offer different things like wellness programs. We all know work-life balance is a myth. And I say that because I think work-life synergy, I think I may have stolen this term from Melissa. But like sometimes work is going to be more important and sometimes life is going to be more important. And that's okay. You're never going to have a 50-50 split. That whole idea of work-life balance and it having to be 50-50 every day is not realistic. Sometimes work is more important and sometimes life is. And so being able to help those team members foster and grow, develop in their in life as well as in their industry, it's going to come back and help in industry as well. So providing wellness programs, like maybe you can offer, and this is something we'll talk about a little bit more with compensation as well. Maybe you can offer resources for things like, gym class or discounts or rates for gym memberships or gym classes, yoga, meditation, mental health resources, stress management work life synergy. There we go. I actually even have it on the slide and didn't even look at that there. Um, flexible scheduling. Like again, are we working with how we can best benefit the hospital and the team as well? And also, how do we have ways that they can access things like employee assistance programs, if vacation and time off and things like that, offering options and resources for financial planning workshops. We're all in vet med. We're terrible with money. We know this. But offering resources for things like that there. So the second one was togetherness. So we talked about this, like as humans, we are social creatures. As much as we hate to admit it, we are social creatures. We do, even the most introverted people, we do crave connection and recognition, even in small amounts. Like everyone scales in different ways, but we do that. At the end of the day, we are all humans. So why in our workplaces do we tend to be very segmented? We want to we get to a point sometimes where we just want to go in, put our head down, get our work done and clock out. Is there things we can do that employees are not just going through the motion and therefore like not acting together? And I love this. And we're going to talk about a little bit about bubble break. One thing I always share, and it's not a plug because I don't work for a company that does any of this stuff, but oh my gosh, catnip bubbles, guys. If you have cats, catnip bubbles, they're the best thing ever. Like, go find them. They're at Petco, PetSmart. Most of your local stores will sell catnip bubbles. My cats went crazy. It was amazing. Sorry, like small pin into let's plug this thing. But ideas for better togetherness, like things you can do as a team. Now, I know there's a lot of teams that as soon as you mention team building, go, ugh, really? Okay, do we have to? But you want to work with. Oh, I've lost everybody all of a sudden. Hang on, there we go. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. So better ideas you can do. So things are recognition, reward, and connection. So how can employees recognize each other? And not that doesn't necessarily just mean manager to peer. We want to look at peer-to-peer recognition as well. Like how can employees recognize and celebrate each other? That doesn't necessarily have to be something that comes from the top down. It also has to be encouraged from the top down, but it can be, we want to encourage it within team members also. How are your team rewarded for doing a job well done? Are we giving breaks? Are we celebrating wins? Are we doing lots of different things like that? And then connections. How well do employees connect with each other on a personal level? Now, in an ideal world, everyone we work with would be all best friends. We all love each other. We all have the same things in common. It would be great. We know that doesn't happen. Everybody has different, hobbies, different personalities. Not everyone is going to always be best friends. However, we can all mutually respect and respect each other and work together. And so we can all connect to each other in a personal way here. So how can we help encourage that? So a couple of next steps here that you can utilize. Does your clinic have a monthly town hall? or a staff meeting where you bring the whole team together. You share obviously business insights with them. You want to be vulnerable to feedback from them in ways that you can actually like hear their feedback and make sure they are being heard. And it's super important for these that this is done in a time when the clinics are closed. The employees are still compensated for their time, but when their sole and focused attention can be on this meeting and talking together, not having to worry about answering the phones, clients coming in, patient care, all those kind of things. You need it to be a period of time when you can all just sit and be together and talk about what's going on with the company or what's going on with the clinic, share some updates. People want to just be informed. The more informed they are, I mean, obviously not everybody needs to know absolutely every minute detail, but just having a general overview is always great. Create employee feedback systems. So there's lots of different ways this can be done. And I have a short plug on the next slide about one thing I work on that can be done here. But you can create feedback anonymous feedback boxes. You can empower a delegate from each area of the organization. So if you're a bigger hospital and you have different departments, you can have someone who's like, again, this gives it also empowering career paths here. Have someone who's like the delegate for that area who can kind of collect feedback from everybody and have that in there. People just need to want to feel like they're being heard, that their concerns or their feedback is positive or negative. Feedback doesn't always have to be negative, but they need to feel like they're being heard and they'll feel like they're valued for their time at work. And then finding your niche. So as I said, everyone's got different hobbies. Everyone's got lots of different things going on here. Maybe your team are super sporty. Is there a way that you can do something? Maybe you do an away sports day, or like have everyone that can join a certain team or be part of something. Now, of course, not everyone's obliged to be doing something outside of the work hours with their team, but maybe there's something you can do to foster togetherness there. Maybe your team are really into board games. I'm a big board game nerd. And you can maybe, again, like have a once every few months, once a quarter, or once every 6 months, you can have that in here. And one of the options I put in here is a bubble break, and this QR code, it will take you to a website where it can encourage you to it's literally 15 minutes. You can take a 15-minute break. They send you all the information and you are just playing around with bubbles, blowing bubbles. You saw from the previous slide the picture of the cat. You can get the pets involved. They are non-toxic, safe bubbles in there. It's really silly, it's really fun, but it just gives you a break in the day to make people smile. And yes, Melissa put in the chat here, the hospital, they'll have a Nerf gun war in the parking lot. It's something silly, but it's something fun. And then also I'm going to talk about Rally here. So again, small plug here for something that I work on. You can have programs that can help you foster and connect with all this information. So as I said, I work for a company named Hound. We have Rally, which is our employee engagement and social recognition app. So it's a way for managers to be able to track how their teams are doing overall on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis. So obviously you have your biannual, annual, quarterly reviews with your team, but do you know how they're feeling in between those sections? And so it allows teams to also share their opinions on essential workplace and hygiene and motivators, so they can share how they feel about their coworkers, how they feel about their SOPs, their career development, their recognition, and all these kind of things. It also has ways in there to socially recognize each other. So we call them boops. If you've met any of us at conferences, anyone works from Hound, you probably got a boop sticker. If you went to Melissa's talk at VWC, you can also, the BBC, you can also you probably got a boop sticker because we gave Melissa a few of them too. But you can share, celebrate each other's wins, celebrate birthdays, celebrate work anniversaries, make announcements, all those kind of things. And for any of you guys that are with MWI, there's a QR. Well, actually, for anyone who would be interested in learning more about this, there's a QR code here where you can book a short, non-obligatory demo with myself or any of our team to learn more about it. And if you guys are with MWI, we do offer a specific MWI discounts and bundled pricing as well. So just a short plug there. And then the last thing here, as I know we're wrapping up on time, is just we can't forget about compensation. That is something, again, we would all love to say that we are not working for money, but realistically, we all need to be paid. We all need to pay our rent. We all need to feed ourselves and our pets. So It really does. It's something that we do need to consider, and we must be paying our employees well to in order to retain them. But some ideas for this here is, of course, we're all going to be competitive. We all want to be competitive with pay, but one of the biggest things here is going to be understanding the living wage in your area. So there's a QR code here for a living wage calculator for different locations where you can plug in your information. It can kind of give you a baseline idea of what the living wage is in your area. I mean, most of us here are based, I think, in Southern California. I may be wrong, but we all kind of have an idea of what the cost of living is like here. It's going to be very different from like rural Utah or somewhere like that. But having an idea of what the cost of living is in your area and being able to compensate so people can live in your area is something that's really important there. Also understanding the most important needs of your employees. So, things like health insurance are important. Can you be considerate of things like childcare, student loans for those that, like for vets and techs who have been to vet and tech school? Those prices do not come cheap. Or if you have the option for your technicians, for example, if they are assistants and they want to go to tech school, is that something that you can build into their compensation package to pay for them? And obviously, you can create like contracts with them for things like this, but it's something that you can offer as a additional benefit for them as part of their calculation. And then the other thing is you can be creative with this and consider non-traditional benefits and how you can help reduce the cost of living. So again, we talked about earlier, when you're considering compensation, most people think of just like the flat baseline salary, which is important, but you can also include in other things in there, non-traditional benefits to top on top of that. So again, we can think about things here like, is it important to be able to offer for your team for mental health and physical health benefits like gym memberships, meditation app, or service subscriptions? Sorry, my brain could think of the word subscriptions then. Can you offer like non-traditional, like do you have a CE allowance, or that's another thing to consider. Lots of different things there, like training courses. I had someone who last time I gave this presentation asked, well, you talk about BTSs and becoming like a technician if you're assistant. What about practice managers? What about receptionists? Well, you can look at training courses for them. Like some of them may not be vet med specific, but for receptionists, there's a ton of customer service, client service, all those different kind of tools out there. So you can absolutely look into different options that are available there that you can maybe invest in. Like they have a certain allowance of training, which is something, again, 94% of people would stay in a job if they were invested in their long-term career goals. So just some ideas there for you. I know it's a lot of information and some small little changes, but small things can make big change. And so really big things here is obviously you want to be proactive about retaining your employees. It does start with these active changes can start with just one person and one person trying and actively making that change. Know your employees, know what their career goals are, know what their needs are. You can have a more personalized, tailored culture within your hospital if you know the employees that you currently have. And this one seems like a really silly one to say, but at the end of the day, the leadership genuinely needs to care. You need your employees to know you care. And so you want to help them, you want to help them stay, you want to retain them. And for you guys as well, you want to stay. If you care, if you genuinely care, it's going to make you stay too. So I promised I would share my information on here too. I should have put the QR code for Raleigh on here, this slide as well, but I didn't think about it. But if you ever want to reach out to me for any questions, I've got all my contact information here. I am a customer experience manager with Hound, as I mentioned, and also I do relief RVT work here in Southern California. You can follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn, or I put both my email addresses on here as well, so you can reach out to me anyway. And again, I will share these slides and all this information with Melissa to be able to share out with the recording of the presentation too, along with a bunch of resources from everything we talked about today. But thank you all for your time. Hopefully you're a little happier in your day from spending some time learning about retention. And hopefully, even if you only took one thing from today, I hope it was useful.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Appreciate your presentation. I too have an orange kitty, so I absolutely connect. I sent you a picture of her sleeping next to me while you're talking. So,
I did see that come through at one point. And yes, and
yeah,
actually this little animated one here, these are my three babies. Unfortunately only two of them are still with us, the little black one and the ginger one. But yes, my ginger one, he is very sweet, but he does only have one brain cell and he shares it with the network.
see, mine's a girl, so she's pretty smart actually. She's a little nervous,
Yeah,
but thank you so much. I appreciate all your
of course.
ideas, and hopefully everyone got a lot of good things. I will upload this to the YouTube channel next week, and I will send the slides out to all the people who've registered, as well as the link once I have that up and ready. So thank you again for coming. For those of you who are watching this on my YouTube channel, thank you for watching it. If you're needing to connect with my YouTube channel, again, it's South Coast Veterinary Manage 263 for future webinars or for past webinars. I think today was my 31st webinar that I uploaded to my, I'll be uploading to my YouTube channel. So I'm very excited about that. So thank you again for everyone who's joined us. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.